The Wyoming sun had barely crested the horizon, painting the vast plains in shades of gold and amber. Dust floated lazily above the fences, catching the light like tiny sparks of fire. Ethan Cole, a man weathered by decades of ranching, guided his horse down the familiar dirt road that led to the Wilkins homestead. His boots crunched against the frozen ground, and the crisp morning air carried the faint scent of pine, hay, and wood smoke. He had ridden this path countless times, but today, each step felt different. Today, he was not here merely to check on his livestock or trade news with neighbors. Today, he had a purpose that weighed heavier than a full sack of grain. He was here to ask for a wife. The Wilkins homestead was modest, a sprawling farmhouse with peeling white paint and a roof sagging slightly in the center. Smoke drifted lazily from the chimney, promising warmth inside. Inside, two sisters bustled about, unaware of the decision that would change their lives. Clara Wilkins was the elder, the kind of beauty that drew whispers from every passerby. Her golden hair fell in perfect waves, her eyes sparkled like the nearby river under the sun, and her laugh carried across the barnyard like music. Neighbors often said she could charm the birds from the trees, and sometimes, it seemed, she did. People admired her, envied her, and assumed she would always have the pick of suitors. Her beauty was effortless, and she knew it. Ruth Wilkins, by contrast, was quiet and unassuming. Her hair was tightly braided, practical for chores, her hands bore the calluses of hard work, and her face carried a quiet strength rather than the flamboyant beauty that drew attention at every town gathering. Ruth rose before the sun, fed the animals, mended torn blankets, and baked bread for the family before most had even stirred from sleep. While Clara was admired, Ruth was needed, her value hidden in routines and habits that went unnoticed by anyone not paying attention. Ethan dismounted outside the homestead, his boots leaving firm impressions in the frost-covered ground. His mare whinnied softly, sensing the tension in her rider's movements. He tied her to the hitching post and adjusted the brim of his weather-beaten hat. He was a man of habits himself, long mornings spent checking fences, evenings devoted to reading the land, and always measuring a person by their actions rather than their appearances. Inside the farmhouse, Clara was setting the table for breakfast, humming softly to herself, her movements precise and graceful. Ruth was already at the stove, stirring a pot of porridge for the family's early meal. When Ethan's shadow appeared in the doorway, both sisters paused. Clara's lips curved into a polite smile, while Ruth's hands froze mid-stir, her heart picking up its pace. Ethan stepped forward, removing his hat. "Mr. Wilkins," he began, his voice steady, though there was a slight tremor betraying his nerves. "I've come to speak with you about your daughters." Mr. Wilkins, a burly man with a laugh that could shake the rafters, raised an eyebrow. "You've got a mighty look in your eye, Ethan. Speak plain." Ethan nodded. "I've come to ask for Ruth's hand in marriage. I want a partner who works with me, who shares the same habits and values that this land demands." For a moment, silence fell like snow settling on the roof. Clara's teacup froze halfway to her lips. Her golden eyes widened, a flash of disbelief crossing her face. Ruth, though her heart pounded, stood taller, her hands clenched in quiet anticipation. She had never expected this, never dared to hope, but here it was, spoken aloud. Clara's voice, sharp with surprise and a hint of hurt, finally broke the silence. You want her. Not me." Ethan's gaze remained steady. "I've watched both of you grow, and I've learned something important: beauty is fleeting. It fades with the sun and with age. Habits, character, diligence, those are what endure. Ruth's consistency, her care for this land, for her family, for others, those are the qualities I need by my side." Clara's jaw tightened. She had been courted before, admired for her beauty, and now a man of substance had rejected her for her sister. The sting was sharp, but Clara had always relied on appearances, not effort. Ruth, meanwhile, felt a warmth spreading through her chest, not pride, not arrogance, but quiet gratitude. Years of unseen work, early mornings, late nights, small kindnesses, they had not gone unnoticed by someone who truly understood their value. Ethan turned to Ruth, his voice softer now. "I don't want someone I can show off. I want someone I can depend on. Someone whose habits will help us survive harsh winters, tough seasons, and everything else life throws at us." Ruth swallowed, her voice trembling but firm. Ethan, I've only ever tried to do what's right. I never imagined, she trailed off, the weight of years of unnoticed effort pressing down and lifting all at once. Outside, the wind rustled the fields, carrying with it the faint sound of neighbors murmuring and the distant clip-clop of other horses. Word would spread, as it always did, but inside the farmhouse, time seemed to stand still. For once, the world outside, the judgments, the gossip, the expectations, did not matter. What mattered was the quiet acknowledgement of value, the recognition of a life built on steady, meaningful actions. Ethan extended his hand, and Ruth took it, her fingers warm against his calloused palm. "We'll face it together," he said simply, and she nodded. Together, yes, they would face it. The long days of labor, the unpredictable seasons, the joy and trials of building a life together. But they would face it with a foundation built not on fleeting charm, but on enduring habits. As the sun climbed higher, spilling golden light across the farmhouse and barnyard, Clara turned away, her dreams of admiration replaced by the harsh lesson of reality. She would learn, eventually, that charm alone could not sustain a life, that habits and integrity carried a weight that beauty could never match. Ruth, meanwhile, returned to her tasks with a quiet smile, carrying the knowledge that every small, consistent act, the early mornings, the careful hands, the thoughtful attention, had led to this moment. And Ethan, watching her, knew that the decision he had made was the right one, guided not by the glittering promise of looks, but by the enduring power of habit and character. The morning settled into a rhythm of breakfast preparations, horses fed, and the land waiting for them to step into it. But in that small farmhouse, a quiet revolution had occurred, the recognition that value is not always visible at first glance, and that a life built on good habits, and the people who uphold them, is a life worth choosing.